here in our office today on a special day for us. Here we are having our longtime friend and partner in the architectural field. He is here. He is someone who has more than 40 years of experience since his graduation. He worked with important offices in the UK and in Europe. After his graduation, he joined Arab Associates, which is one of the biggest firms, not just in Britain, but in the world. He also worked with famous architects, including Richard Rogers, Nicholas Grimshaw, Santiago Calatrava. He then opened his office in 1999. And since then, he has accomplished a lot of large-scale projects in the world, around the world. And he's specializing in high-tech architecture. Since his early years at school, he was very fond of technology. And we were together. We met for the first time. He was the first student I met when I went to Manchester in 1978. We went to this School of Architecture, is a modern building, and the main building, which is from the Victorian time, the Victoria University of Manchester. We spent there 3 years together. This is, I'll just show you some of the pictures that is not working. Huh?
Sam one.
Sam, huh?
Top. The
خلاص
top.
من هون أحسن ها. يعني قاعد هون.
There you go.
This is Hin Tan. He was 19 years old there, or 20 maybe.
19.
19. In my dorm room. This is my dorm. I'm always fond of books and artifacts and things like that. I haven't changed. I still have a lot of these things in my office and my home. But he was very much supportive of the Palestinian cause. And I think the kufiya is very telling here. We had a lot of discussions. He was talking to me about Malaysia, and I'm talking to him about Palestine. Well, we got bonding over these international issues. We're also talking about what was happening in South Africa. You know, we were so much interested in politics. Our first project was in a place called Hebden Bridge. You know, those good old days, or if you like, cold days. The cold here is nothing compared to. Okay, now it's going back. All right. And this is a visit we did to Stratford-upon-Avon, which is the hometown of William Shakespeare. I had visited that place a couple of times, so I told my school that I'm an expert in tourism in Stratford. So I led the whole team there, and here's a picture of me and him. Whenever my parents came over, I would invite him and my other Indonesian friend, Rudy. My mother and my father there. My mother, Allah yarhamhum طبعا, she used to do mansaf and maqluba and all this. So he was familiar with our food as well. Here's Hin Tan at the end of the third year. The British system is 3 years, and you finish, you get a bachelor's. And this is some of his amazing work. He got a first class grade for the first degree in Manchester. A couple of years later, I went to London, where I met with him and our colleagues. These are the most important colleagues, closest to us. We met in a restaurant in London. And then after that, 40 years passed before we met again. And here's the Hin in our old office in Amman with my team, showing us all the achievements that he has done through those 40 years. Actually, he was trying to search for me all the time. And through social media, 10 years earlier, that was in 2015, around that, he found me through the net. We started communicating. It took us, those 8 years for us to meet. And so we started, I showed him all the letters that I kept from our times of communication when he was, after he left Manchester, he went to Liverpool because he wanted to do high tech, and Liverpool was actually more into high tech than Manchester. So we had exchanged a lot of letters, which I kept. He was really surprised to see all these letters I kept for 40 years or so. We went through them. That was in Amman. And then we took him around. We started building more and new memories together. Uh, it's like another life, you know, after those 40 years of absence.
The
And we
me-
took him to Full Hashim, of course, and Habiba, landmarks of Amman.
it's like meeting again on the digital Silk Road.
Yes. And he cooked the Malaysian curry for us at home. He used to do that a lot in Manchester for me. So, and he promised to do it again this time here. Then he invited me to go to his hometown, Kuala Lumpur. So I was invited on an important international conference at Kuala Lumpur. It's called Datum Conference. And here we are at that hall. 2,000 people were waiting here for me to deliver a lecture on the next day. It's really frightening, but here is it. That was in July last year. A very challenging and important event in my life, really, to have all these people. And we had, after the presentation, interesting talk. He led the discussion and the dialogue with all the speakers, international speakers coming from all over the world. And I would like to end with this slide. About 10 years ago, he wrote this appreciation letter to me, which I posted on our website. We came together as friends almost instinctively. 40 years ago, Wael has never left my memory as a selfless, warm-hearted person, ever ready to lend a helping hand. He was practically a fixture in my life for 3+ years, yet he is everybody's person you would want to have as a loyal friend. Of course, the whole letter is a long letter, but it is a very moving and emotional letter, which I posted on our company website. I'm proud of him, and I'm proud of him, and I'm so happy to have him, and we're all eyes and ears now for you to present.
Sure, yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Exchange.
Thank you for that nice introduction.
I can sit here, actually, if you don't mind me sitting. Awesome. Okay.
Right, okay. Yeah, very nice to be here, everyone. A chance to show you all what I've been through for the last 30 to 40 years since we parted and went our separate ways. And I had no idea where he was, and he had no idea where I was. But we did our own thing. And it's nice to reconnect again. It's like two camels meeting in the desert, in the sand. Yeah, so this is a quick way of just letting you all see what I've been doing. It's a lot of work there, from 99 to 2020. And there was a bit of a lull from from this period on. We were doing other things. And then we had a big gap, as you all know, during the COVID lockdowns, 3 years of inactivity. So that's where the portfolio ended. But then it's restarted again. Yeah, so a little bit, can you maybe sharpen that a bit? But so when I was working in London for about 15 to 16 years with these big name architects, and You know, like everywhere, at the end of your young life, you find, you know, you need new challenges because you get taken for granted or you reach the ceiling and various things happen, you know, and you decide, well, I need to move on. I need to change my life and so on. So I decided to go back to Malaysia because I've never lived there as an adult. I grew up there, but never enjoyed life as an adult. And I had this curiosity of what it's like to be actually, how do I get treated as an adult? You know, so I had this burning desire. Then at that time, a minister from Singapore was interviewing a lot of architects. And I refused to go to Singapore. I wanted to go back to my country where I'll be treated. Well, I'm going to feel at home. That's what I thought. I don't want to be a foreigner yet again, you know. So that's how I ended up in Malaysia. And so there was a part that you didn't know, Wael. I worked for 5 years in Kuala Lumpur, where in that 5 years I was able to obtain the local license. There's a lot of exams and so on. And that then allowed me in 1999 to start my own practice. So when I was working in London, I had developed some airports with Nicholas Grimshaw, two airport projects, and I really love this building prototype. Then there was an exhibition, I forget the year. It was December, and I'd already reached my ceiling point in Grimshaw. And I saw that exhibition by Santiago Calatrava. It was amazing, and I thought, I'm going to drop everything in London and go work for this guy. Oh. So, long story short, I went to Paris. The office was closed. I put my CV under the door. And on Monday, somebody called me and said, come for an interview. You know, so then I stayed there for 2 years, working with this grand master, as it were, and learning to see, you know, someone you've seen in books and presentations, and I had this idea, I need to know what makes this guy tick, yeah? So finally, I was there next to him, working with this guy, this big name, Santiago Calatrava, who had been doing all these magical structures all over the world. So again, at the end of the 2 years, I could do a scheme with my eyes closed at lunchtime. I could just reproduce his style 100%. So he would, at the end of my 2 years, he would sort of leave me projects to develop in his style, maybe 2 or 3 options, and then he would then come and choose. So when I finally told his wife that I'm planning to leave to go to Malaysia, she says, no, you can't leave. You know, she refused to let me leave and said, we were planning to send you to Zurich to make you the head, the capo, they said, of the office there. And I said, no, I don't want to go to Zurich to learn another language, the German. I'm just such a small guy. I said, who's going to listen to me? Right? All these big German fellows. And that was my excuse. But the fact is that I really, really wanted to go now. You know, I was then in my early 30s. I wasn't getting any younger. So then headed off to Kuala Lumpur, worked 5 years there. And I took my new wife with me, and we had a great time. Stayed there for 10 years, just over 10 years. And it was the best time in my life. We used KL as a hub to travel all over Europe, all over Asia. Yeah. And you know, had a fantastic amount of work as well, because Asia was booming. So over in Santiago, I worked on the airport in Bilbao, and that was constructed. I managed the whole office and produced the entire construction set for him. And then I left, but I didn't actually get involved on site. Yeah, so I had to go. But anyway, we had a great run in KL for 10 years, at the end of which I had a little child, and we decided to decamp back to London. So that's how I went back and forth. We've since worked in various parts of the world. I mean, the projects. For clients, mostly European clients, as well as some Malaysian clients. There you see a bunch of airports there. We're going to quickly look at those. And then these are the residential and non-aviation work. I've kind of, like, over the 30 years, become a bit of an artist with this prototype. We call it the art and science because it is half science and half art. Let's put it this way. And we'll come to that in the next chapter. It's a very emotional building type as well. I mean, like most buildings are, because you often have to contend with the scientific part, which is the airport planning, based on traffic flow, traffic numbers, and so on, as well as the national psyche. Yeah, what governments expect out of this particular building. So first project is called Sihanouk. This is in Cambodia for a French company, one of the biggest. They run about 36, they operate 36 airports all over the world. And we had the chance to participate in a competition. There was just two of us. I think it's a 3.5 million terminal, very small, really very small. And most of the clients there are basically Chinese mainlanders coming to this place in Cambodia for the gambling dens, the casinos. But what is striking about this is that we went through two phases of this. Even though it's a competition, we had first the client saying, I want something really simple, quick, buildable. I have to build this in 12 months. And so that means a rectilinear scheme. No funny shapes, yeah, straightforward prefabrication in steel and concrete. And we developed this first idea. So there you can see the various spaces, that's airside and so on. I wouldn't delve too much into detail, but just to give you some anecdotes of dealing with clients. The land side treatment, the airside treatment, it's a long building which starts off with the arrival process and leading to the plane. Because it's a quick turnover, these are just short time travelers. They come for no more than a week. You know, they do their gambling stuff and they go back, or they might go to the seaside. So short-term travelers. So that actually creates a new demand, if you like, you know, whether it's what do short-term visitors mean? They come quickly, they don't have family to receive them. They leave also very quickly. Yeah, so all these has implications. And then halfway through, the client said, we need something more wow, as it were. So forget the cheap construction idea. Let's go for something more interesting. And so we came up next with this full wave idea. And those are the concept plans. So you see on that, where's the pointer? So you see here, this is the pre-check-in, yeah? Arrivals hall. you exit into a big outdoor space. Because we're in the tropics, as you will see if you travel to Bangkok, Malaysia, Cambodia, Vietnam, all these airports have very large open outdoor spaces because the climate is very welcoming. I mean, you don't even need to wear anything, t-shirt, and you're comfortable. So there's no air conditioning in these huge areas here. And then you can come up here, up to your security, and then you're into your next area here. So what's interesting is this here, right? And it's so just some 3D modeling. And it's this portion here, you see? So all that is open to the elements, and only small parts of the terminal are air conditioned. So here is the same outdoor space here that you're seeing these layered roofs at the end here. These tiered roofs pay homage to the traditional Cambodian architecture with these temple-like roofs that are in layers, as you know. Yeah. So, oops, oh dear. Where are we? Ah.
Use the arrows on the pointer to go up and down.
Right. Yes. So on the side walls, we were planning these big prefabricated concrete panels here so they could build it quickly. And so the only complicated thing would be this roof here. Yeah. So you're going from land side up to air side to the plane. Next one is Chisinau. This is a competition again in Moldova, a very small country between Romania and Russia, I think. Again, owner says, I want to build it really, really cheaply and quickly. And now I learn, never believe anyone who tells you they want to build it cheaply and quickly. You know, it's just basically it's misinformation. Because when they see something that is cheap and quick, they will reject it like this. So we took them for their word, you know. Something that perhaps might look like an electronics factory when you look at it carefully, but it was meant to be cheap and quick.
And functioning.
Yeah, exactly. And the way we rotated the entire plan to face the road here. Yeah, so in order to bring some presence onto the street, yeah, you see, so we rotated the entire building 90 degrees to the apron so that we could create a presence on the street here. Otherwise, you would never see this terminal. So here you go there, all this plaza area from the car park and so on. There's your approach here, and then you're into the terminal. So rotating it 90 degrees. I think you can see it better here. There's your main highway along here. This is the approach in from existing roads, and into a building that is long and rectangular and thrusts itself into the apron here, and these are the parking and so on. And that's, you know, we came up with that. They were happy with it, but the next level up, who are the top owners, the CEO, or who has to impress a minister, wasn't too excited about it. So ultimately, as I said earlier, these buildings tend to be very emotional. They have an emotional appeal. So when you do something like this in response to a financial need, it always falls flat on you. So I would never believe anyone who says, make me a cheap terminal anymore after so many unsuccessful attempts. They will end up with a cheap, quick building by starting with a fancy building. When they know they can't afford that, and then the project will go down to a box. And that's usually the process. So that's a night view, and here's your typical plan where you've got, after your security screening and everything, you come into a market hall and your gates are here. So that's all fairly standard stuff. Sugut is a very nice little project with only two what we call MAS stands. So MAS are a multi-aircraft arrangements where you can park small and large aircraft. And this, again, very small airport, regional, whereby we got an international wing here and a domestic wing here. And you'd see on the plan, the main point was to really thrust the areas, the departures lounge, right into this pier here. So that's your domestic, and that's your international. And then the rest is all functional space. Yeah, so taking this form. Now, when I was putting the next set of slides together, I realized this manta ray form sort of echoed the one in Abu Dhabi, but this was done much, much earlier. So here you see our form finding process. Now, often you'd find that airport plans are based on, of course, the peak hours, what we call peak arrival and peak departure hours. These are all, these peak hours come from traffic studies, which look at how many incoming flights you have and how many outgoing flights you have at the busiest time of the day, which often is the morning. Everyone wants to travel in the morning. So by taking these passenger numbers, you then create the peak hour. The peak hour then generates a space demand per meter square, and that gives you ultimately a size. Now, when we work backwards, we end up with normally 10,000 square meters per million passengers. So that is roughly the rule of thumb that we use. Now you can go to 8,000, which means everything's a little bit tight and passengers might get a bit of a discomfort. Or you go between 8 and 14. 14 is very generous, so a lot of space, a lot of extra heating and cooling, and so on. So but 10,000 is the norm. And so when we get a person who says, I want a 20 million airport, we can immediately tell them what is the rough size that you need. Are we moving? It's a little bit stuck here.
Maybe with the arrow that is on the keyboard.
Let's move it out.
Keyboard, yeah.
This,
Yeah.
maybe it's in the standby mode, so it's need to turn it off and turn it on again because you did.
Oh, I see.
Okay. It's working.
No.
Strange. اه شو هاد؟
Keyboard.
Okay.
We use a keyboard?
Use the keyboard. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so that one shows us. That's really looking at how people flow and so on, and what happens internally here, daylight and so on. In working in Russia, the latitude is very high, right? And so you rarely get sunshine in the northern hemisphere. So the sun, if ever it comes in, it's at a very low angle in winter. You only see it for 1 hour or 2 hours. But of course, in summer, it gets really, really hot. And, but it's only for a short 2 to 3 months. So the rest is winter, literally. It switches from summer straight to winter. There's no intervening season. So what we're saying to this client here is, have as much roof lights as possible. I know it creates your heating problem, but you need to catch your low angle sun as much as you can. I think I'll end at this one. This is Montijo. It's the most recent one that we did in 2022. And this is actually the most wonderful project because we went through with the French clients. They own the concession to all the airports in Portugal. And they're I would say, quite a knowledgeable and sophisticated client. They have experience with 36 airports and a good knowledge base of what they actually want. So in Portugal, you know, there is Lisbon Airport, which is quite an old structure, not really working. Maybe it's at around 8,000 per million. So the idea was to tap into an existing military airport, which is underused, and coexist with the military a new terminal dedicated to low-cost flights. So these are all Ryanair, EasyJet, you know, all the low-cost flights will come to this terminal. The existing Lisbon will have the legacy airlines. So the clientele or the customer base is really very, very different. They are people who fly in for holidays. They not only a week or 2 weeks, even just for a weekend. So they're talking about, this is a 10 million passenger terminal. But the analysis that we went through with Vinci Airport was a very satisfying one, because we went through all the processes and looked at every aspect of the procedures for boarding a flight if you're going low cost. And what happens when you're there, they wanted the carnival or the holiday spirit to start immediately when you arrive at the airport and when you leave the airport. So there is a very strong emphasis on what we call, if I can see this area here. So we started with the idea of making a square in front of the terminal where everyone comes into the square, because Lisbon is, you know, a city with a lot of historical squares, you know, with beautiful squares and so on. And from there, the square developed into something else. Here you see in this terminal, there are no loading bridges, because all these holding gates are for walking straight up to the plane. So that's the difference between the traditional and the low-cost flights terminal. So the key point really of this is the similar to Sihanouk, the idea of attaching a square in front, and the triangular shape here encompassing what we call a market hall, meaning that's where your food and beverage and shopping and retail is all happening in that triangle. So you're going from one landside experience to an airside experience. Yeah, so here enlarged is the landside experience. So in the end, it was like a big square, but there are squares within squares. These are covered routes in case it rains or it's too hot. And then along these routes would be food and beverage again, a lot of beer, a lot of alcohol, because this is where people come to party, right? This beach destination. You can see the river there, and then up here again, massive offerings, food and beverage. So the sort of the holiday begins here, which you won't find in many other terminals. And I think we shall end here because Palmarola is something else. So that's just briefly a few airports there. The last two, which is Montijo and Palmarola, shows an example of landside activity, what we call pre-screening. That means before you get screened for security, the opportunities to create commercial activity. This is not often the case because all airport planners want you to come in, do your boarding, do your check-in, screening, and then go straight in. After that, you go into your duty-free, you do your shopping, and you eat and whatever, and then you board your flight. So that's the normal process. So yeah, so we can go now onto the workshop content, if you like. Shall we do? You want to have any questions on this? We can go straight in, yeah, if you're all okay with it. Yeah. So I chose this topic because it's my specialty. This is what I do now, apart from other small things. And over the decades, I've learned a lot from many other professionals who are in this field, and have come to understand the entire business of designing terminals. And so I'd like to share with you today what the passenger experience means in airport design. It's a term that has been, maybe you might have read it or somewhere in magazines or travel magazines and so on. People talk about good experience, bad experience, and so on. But sometimes we don't understand what it is. We read and we think, yes, yeah, I had a bad experience or a good experience. But what does it really mean in terms of the design science behind it? Yeah. So here is a write-up. This is a write-up of a story that I did, my experience in the early in 2019 or 20. It's a story where I'll just quickly recap here, where I was transferring in Frankfurt from Vienna to Frankfurt and Frankfurt to London, right? All of you have traveled before. You know what transfer's like. So the ticket sold, clearly gives you enough time to transfer. But when I got to Frankfurt, you joined the transfer queue, and what happened was there was out of several machines, only one screening machine was on, a couple of staff manning it, and behind me were 200, or in front of me, 200 passengers waiting to go through. There were no display signs of the next flights. So everyone was waiting in the dark, and there were these two guys taking their own sweet time, putting bags through again and again. There were customers who fed their bags through, nothing happened. They just decided to do it again, get them to walk through the scanners again, and just repeating and delaying everybody. So until about 20 or so people in front of me, everyone was getting agitated. They were getting fed up with this slow process, and people started demanding to see the manager, the supervisor. Where is the supervisor? We want more lanes open and all that. And we're talking Frankfurt, yeah, one of Europe's largest terminals, known for transfers. But here was that service. Anyway, I eventually got through, and I ran as fast as I could to my gate, which was almost 800 meters away. So when I finally got there, about to collapse, right, with a bag, there was a sign saying plane delayed. Yeah, and everyone was still sitting there. So that was a terrible experience. And on that day, I swore to myself, one, I'm never going to transfer in Frankfurt again. And secondly, I'm going to start doing some research about this. Why is there a failure in transfer? Why can't the airport simply put up a sign of all the flights, a monitor, showing what flight's delayed, what isn't, and what's on time? So everyone in the queue would know, can they get through or not? And why not have some people there, if you're really, really delayed, to have the chance to go first, right? So all of this so-called passenger comfort ideas were not in place. So
that's after you have designed several airports.
Yes, yeah.
So it's not on the first.
No, not in the beginning. This is way after, and I could see such a failure of a major airport. And we're talking about a German society, which is well known for its efficiency. But if you speak to a German, they'll say, no, we are the most inefficient country in the world. So anyway, the reputation and the reality don't quite match. So the next issue really is, how many of you remember what you have just been through? Yeah? What kind of memory do you have after you entered and left an airport, or you've arrived at, what do you see? And what kind of experience did you have? Was it a hellish experience? Was it great? Maybe you went for a wonderful wedding, in Bali, and then you came back and you had this horrible experience, and it soiled your memory. And also, was the building, did it make an impression on you? Do you remember what you went through? Did it reflect this country? The answer probably is no. Nobody remembers anything. And this is interesting. If one can do a survey, ask these questions to passengers as they leave the airport, ask them to take a survey, you'd be pretty sure that this is the case. Nobody remembers what they have just been through. You see? I don't remember the famous Foster building coming out of Amman. I know that it's all black and dark and very austere inside, but externally I have no mental picture. So this is quite normal.
Memory is associated with the emotions. Memory mostly, if you recall memory. So how can you build an emotional feeling towards a space or a place to really actually make it more attached?
And that is part of what we call the passenger experience, that issue today. So our memory is just blotches like that picture, bits of things here and there, or maybe you remember buying something from there, or a souvenir, or you ate something. That's about it. So the other side of the coin is, people who commission airports, they want it to be a national symbol, right? Like I said to you earlier, The person who said, make me a cheap airport that I can build in 1 month or 12 months, basically is wrong. Because every airport, no matter how small, is a reflection of the country's aspirations and culture. So, like you see here, this is Beijing, the famous Daxing Airport in Beijing. I mean, it's a Zaha project, right? What does it say about the country? What does it say about Chinese civilization? Nothing. But yet it's a national symbol. For me, it's a symbol that they can afford this expensive architect. And they were into projecting, some vision of the future, of maybe technology, that they don't want to look back in the past, they want to look into the future. That's a valid point, right? This one here, how many of us seeing this feel that this is representative of Abu Dhabi? When you see this lump of glass, and then you have no awareness that the roof actually looks like that, unless you're a bird flying in the air. So this is really, back to my point here, they want a connection to the country, double eagle, a bird, or a national flower. Can a kangaroo represent Australia? An octopus like this one? Or a manta ray? But when you go internally, these elements of culture come up to bring us that emotional attachment to a country, right? This is Singapore with the waterfall. And externally, again, many people don't know what it looks like because you're connected internally via links and passages. But when you get there, you have this amazing waterfall. It's completely glass building. And this is what people remember. Yeah, you take photos and so on. Similarly, you take photos here. So these big items that come down and touch the ground seem to be a current theme at the moment. So the evolution, very quickly jump back into time. How did airports evolve into these mega structures that we see today? And it's we simply hark back to the 18th century, the 19th century, when steam trains were invented, and we needed a high ceiling. You needed daylight to light the big space. All the steam would go up, or the coal, the smog would rise up, leaving the bottom layer a little bit cleaner. And then you jump over to the late 80s, I think. Late 80s. This was Foster's and the first application of a high-tech style onto a terminal here. Again, extremely high ceiling, plenty of roof lights, and people down here at this level feel really small, just like in the train stations. So you go from the Victorian era to the high-tech era, and ever since then, there's been an evolution from pure height, as it were, pure structures, to what is now called the experience, the passenger experience, the window to the world. When you land, you're entering a country, it's a window to the country, and so on. So we go from a preoccupation to experience. Why is that? Does anybody know why we've gone switched over? It's simply the funding model. Airports used to be paid for entirely by governments, but today it's all privatized. Yeah, so the funding model and non-aviation revenue now accounts for 40 to 60%. So airports are now getting their money from this thing called NAR. And it's all kinds of things right here, right? retail concessions, advertising, events, rentals from real estate, parking charges, and so on. Now, the balance is in aviation revenue, which are the landing fees. They'll charge you for using the passenger loading bridge, for pushing your planes back. So all these incurred charges. So every month, every airline that uses an airport gets a bill for landing charges, how many passengers, and the bill is based currently, I believe, based on the weight, the total weight of the aircraft. Sometimes it's based on how much CO2 that plane emits, or maybe there is a link now between the two, but it has been charged by weight. That means your baggage and so on, and your passengers all add up to this weight, and then you get charged. So every month you get this bill that says how many times you've used a loading bridge, pushback, services, and so on. So airlines pay on a monthly basis on that sort of front.
So you're saying it's becoming a business.
That is a standard.
It's privatized.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's been a while now. I mean, I'm not talking recent.
Is it better to be funded by the governments or this?
Governments don't have money to fund airports anymore, so they privatize it. Unless you're a wealthy government like Dubai or Emirates, you can build your own terminals and don't care about the energy that you're blowing. So, for example, in Changi, they're getting a very high financial return from NAR. And sometimes airports deliberately don't charge you any landing fees to encourage people to come in so that the commercial areas are used. And then, subsequently all the smaller suppliers, like the people who ramp services and so on, they get business, right? They continue to function. So what is the connection to passenger experience? NAR and passenger experience. There is a very strong commercial link there. So we are all fooled into thinking that the airport wants us to really enjoy this amazing space, like Dubai, for example. Let's make it the seventh wonder of the world for shopping. The reason is this: you increase your dwell time. When you increase your dwell time, you reduce your stress, and then you start spending. And when you start spending, your non-aviation revenue goes up. So that is the connection between the two. So non-aviation revenue is the fascinating key, I call it, to how airports today stay competitive and then they stay financially solvent as well. So...
If I may ask, just regarding the point, I think there's, I don't know if I could say that it's a contradiction, but speaking of the transition from preoccupation to experience, and then at the same time, there's no real experience there. So we're focusing on creating an experience, but it's not memorable. There's no actual experience, just like you said. So the fact that we're increasing the dwelling time, or there is not much of actually living the experience, does that lead to a poor experience that is paid for? It's so much paid for.
Yeah, well, that depends on customer to customer, I think. Most of this so-called airport experience in the terminology used by this industry talk about an experience where basically what it is you spend money. You're going to spend money in Changi, go to the cinema if you have a long 3-4 hour layover. In Thailand, go get a massage. So it's all about spending money, but that spending money is couched in terms of, look at all these things that you can do, right? So it depends. And if you're someone who wants another kind of experience, you may not find it there.
Because you mentioned the traditional part, or some sort of an experience that expresses the identity of the country, and I don't know if that's possible to achieve, considering probably the transitional nature of the terms or the international nature. So it's a very valid point, but from where we are now, internationally speaking, I don't know how that can be achieved.
Yeah. Yeah, it is tricky to find, both, as it were. Thailand tries to do that, the big Savannah Bhumi. It has massive, how many of you been there before? It has massive, food and beverage and all that. And then at these intersections, you see a little temple, And so they're trying to remind you that amongst all this high-tech architecture by, who is the architect? The American guy? Chicago. Anyway,
Helmut Jan?
yes, Helmut Jan. Amongst all that, you have, don't forget, you're in Thailand. There's all these Thai pagodas and pavilions. Singapore has nothing to say about itself, apart from efficiency, cleanliness, and maybe tropical nature. And that's why that glass thing, with all those plants and water, that's to remind you you're in Singapore, you're in the tropics. We've got all this amazing vegetation.
Bali is the airport is significant.
Bali is wonderful, yes. Yeah, Bali has that deep cultural thing, and that's what they're very good at in Indonesia. Yeah. Yeah, so let's go on to the next one. And what bullshit am I saying? Okay, so very quickly, I mean, all of you know departure flows. I'm going to stand up a bit, see better. So the usual departure flow is you check in, and then you got conventional check-in desk, you got kiosk, backdrop, and then you got your passport control, boarding card control, security check, and then so on. Are you international? Are you domestic? So at every stage, but I've highlighted the key stages here in these red boxes. This is where your stress points are. And don't forget, the experience in the industry talks about reducing stress points. So these are the areas where you are stressed. And the minute you enter and you find your airline counter, but there's about 200 people in front of you, you're immediately stressed. Or you have to wait, behind some very slow people or whatever. Anything can frustrate you because you're in transit mode. Your whole mindset is geared towards getting to an endpoint, right? So often, even when I'm traveling and I have my wife with me and she's a little bit slow, I get all hot and bothered.
Stressing you.
I get stressed myself. So every little thing can stress a person in travel, and then the boarding pass control. You put your phone down several times; it refuses to open, and you have to wait for someone. At any point in this process, there are glitches and there are problems. Or security check, something beeps, which is not your problem. You make a wrong remark, and then you get pulled aside because you insulted someone. So anything can happen. Then you got immigration, which is passport control here, or e-gates, and after that you wait in this hall here. And finally, you get to your gate and you board.
There is the standard in all airports.
This is basically an international diagram. Yes, yeah. Some countries may have a slightly different procedure. And like in Russia, for example, in Russia and Central Asia, what they do is they will screen you at this point here. One or two major screening points. So there's an extra screening. You have to screen everything, all your luggage, and then you get screened again. So
We have it here, I think.
yeah, that's a pre-terminal screening, we call it. You do that, yeah?
Yeah. It's simple and quick. Maybe it's
Yeah.
not that serious. But
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's an emotional barrier, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
For the boarding and after the boarding.
Yeah.
Usually it's a custom screening, we call it. So it's just to make sure that you don't have anything contraband to begin with, I think. Arrival flow, again, I mean, we are all familiar with arrival flow. The biggest kind of headache point is this baggage reclaim. I mean, and possibly your visa thing, immigration. When there are crowds. So congestion is our main problem to the experience. Anyway, the cause of stress and anxiety. So the causes of congestion, they come from several factors. One of which is in the planning of terminals, these so-called parameters. So these are the assumptions that we make. How many seconds you need, how many minutes you need to clear a passenger in the check-in, in various points along the journey. And often these assumptions are wrong. And so they are used in the design of the terminal initially. And so from here, you can calculate how many check-in positions, how many immigration desks that you need, and so on, using these parameters. I recently used, a few days ago, I decided to test these parameters, and I used DeepSeek. Have any one of you heard about DeepSeek? Yeah, so I typed in DeepSeek, how many check-in desks do I need if I were to use 112 seconds, based on this peak hour, and it gave me a wonderful answer, 27. 27 check-in desks. And it analyzed the entire process of thinking before it gave me the answer. But in this project here, this particular project, Sihanouk, which is where we got this from Arab, they propose only 17 check-in desks. So you can see potentially there may be a problem in future. If 17 was built and you had that peak hour, and you'll find congestion. And that's because maybe someone, had used the wrong criteria here. So that's one area of contribution here. And a lot of this comes from understanding the society, the culture, like in Palmarola, Honduras, the one we did, we had to do longer check-in times because people come with entire families. When a person travels, almost the whole village, they told us, the whole village shows up to send him off. And there's this long process at the check-in desk where they say goodbye and so on. So it delays everybody else. So this 112 seconds will not work. Maybe like 5 minutes. So in the case of Palmarola, we ended up with a massive check-in hall with a lot of space for families to linger. So and then of course the next area of congestion is the screening mode. So most airports have what we call a centralized security screening, and some do gate screening. So you only screen at the gates just before you board, yeah? But most favor this because you centralize your staff. You don't have to have, let's say, you have 20 flights going off at once. You're going to need 20 times the amount of personnel to monitor the screening here. Whereas here you can have 10, let's say, and they can do the entire lot. Yeah, so the centralization means you reduce the number of personnel.
They do this in Canada.
Centralization. Most airports do this. It's standard, yes. Standard accepted process. Yeah, that's one of the problems. Oops, did I press? Yeah. So this is one of the main problems. Whereas I can tell you that this one is used in KLIA, Kuala Lumpur, and it's wonderful to go through because you only have to queue with all the passengers for that flight. You don't have to queue with another, 6,000 people here. You're only queuing with that number of people there. And so it's very quick and very fast. So those are the two main factors of congestion at screening. And why did we focus on screening? Because according to CETA surveys, the highest number of customer dissatisfaction is here in screening. Yeah, so that's the dissatisfaction scale here. And the next one is baggage retrieval at 31% here. And following passport control here. So these are the key points. I mean, everywhere else along the journey, you've got your stress points. And especially this country here, never go there. That's the TSA in the US. So we got, it's no one's favorite part of the terminal, as I say there. The threats to screening is basically legal rights. And there are several cases in Europe where passengers feel that their rights to privacy have been violated, and they have taken cases against airports. So that's a threat for screening.
As an example, what kind of legal rights?
That you're keeping their data. Maybe you've taken a photo or whatever. They've gone through this circular thing. You've taken a snapshot. They want to know what happens to it, and so on. They're pulled off, and were they filmed? So that you've got technology that basically encourages a fear of invasion of privacy, and full body scanners and so on. So these are the threats to getting rid of scanning, but you can't get rid of it. You can only make the process quicker. So hence, a new topic called the digital airport has been banded around for the last 10 years. It is mostly tied up with what we call seamless travel, where basically you don't need to take out your passport anymore. You've done it once, it's registered with the system from the airlines to the airport, and every time you go through via face recognition or maybe with a QR code, you can simply walk through. And that again goes back to the whole thing about reducing the dwell time in these critical points and allowing you to go straight through to the promised land, which is where they want you to spend money. Yeah. Okay, so as I said, the legal basis is in this this IATA code. No, not IATA. It's the ICAO, which comes from the United Nations, Section 17. And in the EU, it is this one, Regulation 300, 2008, which basically, both of these codes say that you must screen the person separately from the goods. And, when we understand the law here, we know why they ask us to do all those things. So airlines can offer goods screening, personalized screening as part of an enhanced experience. So, for example, in So what they're trying to do now is make your life easier, basically. So in order to make it a better experience, they can't get rid of screening because of the law. But to make your life easier, people are offering, and this is an opportunity, the ability to welcome you, do everything for you, get your boarding pass while you sit in the lounge, and have a tea or coffee. And then after that's done, you can simply go to your gate, go up and be cleared.
VIP.
Kind of a CIP, yes, yeah. And my last visit to Baku, they are doing that a lot now, because it's a tedious process, and also it encourages people with money to use the service. They pay for a little bit, and it's all part of giving you that experience. And what airports do is they will reduce screening time, reduce queue lengths by actively managing the queues. You all have seen these tensor barriers, this tape that goes around. Normally, as you see in my diagrams, you've got all these lines where you can just join a line to a passport control desk and so on. But why aren't people doing that? Why is it they make you cross the width of the hall 20 times before you get to one? It's like, exercise, right? You go up and down. Even when there's no one, you're the only person, you still have to do this dance all the way there. Well,
They're smart. They cut it short sometimes when they see.
yes, they should do that, because lack of personnel to manage this. So that's called the queue management system. And often the queue management, if it's not managed, it becomes a hindrance to decongestion. You make it worse, right? So the opportunities then are that many third-party people are now creating software where they manage people flow, or they identify where congestion is, and they help the airport to see immediately, real time, where the problems are, and then they can then send people down to manage the flow. So
AI systems, AI driven.
not necessarily, no.
necessarily.
I'll come to that in a short while. So the other experiences that we all know about would be aircraft delays, no show of an aircraft, or it's delayed from another airport. Inadequate seating, you find people lying, sitting on the floor. Filthy toilets, poor signage, lack of quiet zones, or poor dining, and digital terminal issues, visa on arrival issues as well. So these are all part of that so-called experience. So the opportunities for third-party people to manage these flows are like this. Yeah, you've got some companies use low-level radar to detect people, and that's when you can actually see where they are on screen. Some use your Wi-Fi signals from your phone, or for example, passenger tracking, head count. This company uses that. Facial recognition, Mflow uses that. Beyondtra, which is this one here, is a scenario planning. So they will look at your yearly passenger movements, your monthly and your hourly, and they can help you visualize and plan ahead, basically. For example, let's say you've got a Hajj season, or in Europe you have a Christmas season. Those are the peaks. And this company helps you manage those peaks to see how many more airplanes you need to clear the passengers and so on. And then, of course, the final thing, the big thing now is the digital airport. These are driven by technology companies like SITA and other players here, pushing, again, technology that is data driven. So from connecting all the sources of information into seamless travel, basically. The main thrust of the digital airport is making the passenger flow through, in and out, fairly easily. But you've got to give up your privacy to some point. You've got to surrender your face, pictures, and everything else about you, your address, your phone number, email details, all has to be registered. Now that's different from something that is like in Malaysia, they're now going to get citizens to use a QR code to enter and leave the country. So you only need to register your passport once, and after that, you don't need to travel with a passport anymore. You can just use your QR code because all the data is there. And so if you've lost your passport, it doesn't matter. You've got your code, you can still enter the country. But it may not be accepted by, if you're traveling somewhere else, let's say to Jordan, they might not accept your QR code. Yeah? So it's only for the benefit of the citizens of that country. And that's different from the digital airport. Okay, so now we know that passenger experience and non-aviation revenue, when one goes up, the other one goes up too. So because the whole so-called, I wouldn't call it a science, it's more like a psychological con job. The whole experience is to reduce waiting times and to reduce congestion. The point being that if we can get you through quicker, because whether there's congestion or not, most of you are going to arrive 3 hours earlier before your flight. So you've got 3 hours to kill. And in that 3 hours, we want you to empty your wallet, spend your money, right? Sorry?
Why we need 3 hours to be?
Well, because for international flights, it's recommended that you arrive 3 hours before your flight. For domestic, maybe 1 hour. For European flights, 2 hours. And that's subject to no delays, right? So
When we think in the patients, we can go before 1 hour or 1 hour.
you can go anytime, yes. That's just the recommended.
It's a recommendation.
Yeah.
There is also now auto luggage check-in, also now standards at some airports, where you can check your luggage automatically.
Earlier, yes, yeah. Yeah, a lot of things have come up, yeah. Yeah, so these two are related, right? Non-aviation revenue goes up, your experience goes up. And so that's why airlines and airports are both doing the same, both trying in many ways to improve this flow into this area, what we call the happy spending area. So there was, many years ago, an article in Financial Times, a negative article, not a positive one. It basically says that these areas in terminals, here, duty free and all that, is a fraud. That it's designed to, everything is carefully designed to trick the customer into doing things that they don't want to do. You're in an airport to catch a flight, but they make you go through this in order to, encourage spending and to so-called make your experience a better one and pass your time and so on. So I remember reading this FT article and thinking, this is really true. I mean, I just want to get the hell out of this place, but you make me sit there and spend money. But on the other hand, you think, if I go to this airport and there's nothing to do, I'm also equally frustrated. So yeah, so it's a balance in the end, right? So it is basically essentially very, very carefully designed labyrinth. And there's a whole industry of experts, as you know, who do airport retail design, and they come up with all kinds of ideas like, oh, here's a corner lot here, you know. This one is very prominent. It has a different rate, rental rate. Then you need anchors, you know, anchor tenants. And there's a whole, it's like planning a mall. And these retail experts, basically, we don't get involved because they don't think that we're expert enough to do this kind of planning. So there are many global companies that are set up just to do airport retail. And then there's airport signage and so on.
So you only zone the space, and then there's another company that
Yes.
comes and do that.
Yeah,
Are
we
they
zone.
like initially architects or maybe
They are not architects, they are retail consultants.
retail consultants?
Yeah. So they create the mix, like how many square meters of this and that, you know, how many hot kitchens you need, and the cold kitchens, like sandwich places. Look,
Business lounges and all these.
yeah. So they look at your profile, the country's profile, the hinterland, customer base, who's likely to be going there. Like in the case of Lisbon, Montijo, we had a terrific retail planner there. He was employed by the airport, but he knew exactly what was going on. You know, who were the likely customers in this new terminal. He had his database of potential people who wanted to rent and how much they would increase it by, and so on. So this is like the primary source of info. He then passes it on to a retail designer. And the retail designer creates the mood, the ambience, you know, the recommendations. So you have like common seating everywhere, or you allow every unit to have their own seats, all those issues.
Space size, they call it space size ratio of duty free compared to airports. Is there like a percentage? Or?
There is a percentage, yes. Yeah, and also there's a percentage of 80-20. So 80% is deemed to be needed airside. So after you clear passport control, and you
Space, and then there's another company that
Yes.
comes and do that.
yeah.
Are they like initially architects or maybe
They are not architects, they are retail consultants.
retail consultants?
Yeah. So they create the mix, like how many square meters of this and that, you know, how many hot kitchens you need, and the cold kitchens, like sandwich places.
Lounges, also business lounges and all these.
Yeah. So they look at your profile, the country's profile, the hinterland, customer base, who's likely to be going there. Like in the case of Lisbon, Montijo, we had a terrific retail planner there. He was employed by the airport, but he knew exactly what was going on. You know, who were the likely customers in this new terminal. Database of potential people who wanted to rent and how much they could increase it by, and so on. So this is like the primary source of info. He then passes it on to a retail designer, as it were. And the retail designer creates the mood, the ambience, you know, the recommendations. Do you have like common seating everywhere, or you allow every unit to have their own seats? All those issues.
Space size ratio of duty free compared to airports. Is there like a percentage? Or?
There is a percentage, yes, yeah. And also there is a percentage of 80-20. So 80% is deemed to be needed airside. So then after you've cleared passport control, and you're in the boarding area. 80% commercial, and 20% is landside. So currently that's the balance. So the assumption is we take you through as fast as we can, stress-free, with all these new scanning systems and so on, and push you into this hall. And that's where most people will be doing their shopping. The concept is, as soon as I clear passport and security, I can finally rest and look for a place to eat, right? That's the common mindset. And so that's why the split is 20% landside, because people just want to get through. Unless you're in Honduras, where families come, they sit for an hour, they chat, before they take the flight, and then they buy food.
I think in the airport here in Amman, they have they put a 10-minute limit
Oh, is it?
for us to
Clear off.
clear off. After those 10 minutes, you have to pay like 5 JDs. So now we all tell them go away.
I see. That's for the parking. Is it the parking?
It's the second level of the
For
parking.
departures, for departures.
Uh-huh.
You drop someone for departure.
Oh, that's
Maybe 5 or 10 minutes
Only
to leave the gate.
Yeah.
After that, you will be fined 5 GDs.
Yeah.
So people
Yeah.
start.
We do it so fast.
yeah. No, that's because they want you to park. Yeah, because it's part of the non-aviation revenue. So you should park to help the airport. Earn some money.
We do all the goodbyes before the gates. After the gates, there's no goodbye. It's only functional.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so that's the 80-20 split. So the next stage is, if you like, we can start thinking about this, and maybe the so-called workshop that you want to do, we could be thinking about the next 2 slides that I'm going to show, or next 1 slide, which is what is the potential for pre-screening experience, and what will the plan look like if there is potential, and what will you put in this area? So remember, in the Sihanouk plan, we had this public domain, just a flashback, public domain here, and then typically you would have an airport domain, and then an airline domain, right? Airline officers and so on. And then in the middle here would be all your screening, your processing, passport control, and so on. And then you're into your in this case is agora, or market hall, or the piazza.
Duty free.
Yeah, duty free. Yeah, and then then your planes. So you got this straight line process. So my workshop for today is, what do you think is the potential for this area in terms of an experience? There are potentially, people who are coming early, right? The concept is to get through quickly and go in. But you have the elderly that need more time. They often come earlier. The elderly are afraid to miss their flight. I remember my parents always want to be there early because they walk slower and everything is slower for them. You have people who have just missed a flight the day before. They might be still hanging around. Or they might be staying in a hotel and then they want to come check in early and see, look up what's happening to my flight and so on. So there are already potentially quite a lot of people who do come early. And then on top of that, you may have different kinds of customers who are in the country for different purposes. So think about that and think about what can happen here. And in this case, in this case in Sihanoukville, we had this huge outdoor area full of pavilions and restaurants and stores and everything, like an outdoor piazza, yeah, with semi-covered. And if I show you this, this is the last slide. This is Berlin Airport, the new Berlin. That's the check-in hall. This is a 20 million terminal. And if you analyze the plan of Berlin, everything is rectilinear, as you would imagine in Germany. You will not even have space for anything extra on this plan. It's just counter after counter, corridors, and then you're in screening, and then you're in. And then it's a Schengen, non-Schengen issue after that. All along here, extremely tight and narrow. There's your market hall is here. And then, you know, most European airports are like this. So think about what can happen here if, you know, if there's opportunity. And this is Bangkok, the Suvarnabhumi. Again, fairly similar to that, but they have a lot of cultural points within that to remind you that you're in Thailand. What can happen here in a typical plan? Example, KLIA 2, which is Kuala Lumpur. This is the low-cost terminals, 60 million capacity. And as part of the entire experience, and knowing that 60 million people are coming onto a low-cost terminal, they banged in a shopping mall in front of the terminal. So this was added before this was constructed. They decided to build a shopping mall in front. Rightly or wrongly, that's created an amazing experience for all these passengers here, because the KL is a major hub for European travelers to explore Southeast Asia. From there, they go off to all these islands, Philippines, Indonesia, you know, Thailand, or they can also go to Thailand. But KL is a big hub because Air Asia flies to. Have a think, and all of you are free to come and just say your ideas, make a sketch or whatever, and talk about it. Yeah, and if there are any other topic as well, feel free. This is just something that is out of the ordinary. Yeah. All right. Thank you. I think there's coffee behind. Mm. Yeah.
How did you like?
And your solutions.
Please. For the land side, can we start thinking about the airport experience, not only involving the passengers, but actually the crew that comes with the passenger? So at some point, the land side, well, or at least for me as a passenger, I would love to get rid of that check-in process and get safe afterwards, so I won't be able to maybe enjoy the first portion of that zone. However, whenever we get a passenger to the airport, there is eventually a crew with him, would say at least one person or a family members. So we can think about the land side as in terms of investment for the people after they drop off, whoever wants to travel, and then start using the facilities in there. And especially when we start as well talking about airports, which is located at least half an hour maybe away from the city. So it would be really nice to have some maybe special time there using the facilities there. Now, how we can think about it, well, it depends how we think about the airport designs. And since you already mentioned, should the airport reflect the city or not? But we can think in a different way that the airport can be as a metropolitan hub. So at some point, well, it shouldn't have. I don't know if it's important to have a lot of cultural inputs, but maybe a place where everyone can rest stress-free. Maybe have some of the landscape around. Maybe intervene with the building, because as architects we always romanticize about having the building to be merged with the scene. I know there's some technical issues and security issues, but maybe that can be a first step of a strategy how we can think about this landside at the beginning. And when you introduce as well the digital airport, I think might take a lot of time, and maybe the security can find by mistake a knife that I don't know if I put it there or not, but that would be really good.
Yes, so-
Yeah, so eventually how you manage the flow itself can allow you to think about other technical parts. And this allows as well another intervention. Can we think about the airport not only a structure that accommodates airplanes, but maybe it can have a different function that, I don't know how, but it depends on the area that is part of. Maybe some facilities that can benefit, I don't know, that community there, if there was a community. And maybe the way that Rimkulas thinks about his architecture, there's always this kind of mingle between the program that we can always add something that is different. It's not only tailored for the function itself. Maybe that would allow it to be more alive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of points there, very good points.
Yeah.
The one that stands out is the digital airport. And if a passenger knows that he can get through screening and passport really fast, then he is tempted to spend his time landside.
Yeah.
If I know I can go through in 5 minutes, I don't have to rush to get in.
Yes.
And that is one of the key solutions to creating the landside mass, as it were. That's first point. The second thing is you talked about the airport, ones that are nearer a city, say half an hour. Could they be extended into part of the community, right? And offer something like the city that's nearby? That's always been one of the objectives of most airport owners, which is to offer something beyond the travelers and create a community, basically. So people nearby can go do shopping, they can do a lot of other things, and eventually, in much bigger setups, there is the idea of the airport city, which is all landside. So you can grow the area immediately in front of the terminal, or you can create a whole new city to support the terminal, and vice versa. And airport cities are almost in many places, Amsterdam and, a lot in Germany, hotels, convention centers, exhibition halls. These are all part of the additional landside activities. So yes, completely feasible. But the key is cracking the entry.
20% in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I think that's the.
And I personally would hang out outside rather than be compressed, because a terminal basically is a transitory space, as you know. You're only passing through, and that passing through experience can be a nice experience or it can be an awful experience. Whatever it is, you are trapped once you're inside. Once you pass passport control, there's no way back.
Yes.
You're stuck in there.
But how about the people who drive the passengers to their destination? They should at least maybe enjoy the part there.
Yes, of course, yeah.
So maybe even after the drop-off, or at least the journey between, let's say, the initial point of arriving to the zone of the airport until the gates, just that path where you drive your vehicle, you can see some maybe some landscape scenes, waterfalls, trees. It depends on the country you're in. So as a passenger first, I might have this kind of good experience maybe for about 5 minutes until I reach out. So there's kind of transitional zone. It shouldn't always be some retail shops, but maybe
Yeah.
some scenery that will be designed in a way that welcomes you to the airport, or at least to make you feel that you're transitioning to this metropolitan
Yeah,
hub
you're
that
right.
we want.
Yeah, we often try to do that. We call it the landside urbanization, as it were, which is to create that nice welcoming zone, as well as have activities and so on. But quite often it's cut out at the end.
Because it's costs.
It's cost, and there's no guarantee of any returns.
How about the people who drive the passengers? Eventually, you'll have someone who wants to engage maybe in that part. Would it be possible? Say I drove you to the airport. Now I want to get back, but should I get back like really fast and get out of the airport, or I can enjoy some facilities that can be in the landside?
Well, it all depends. If you're a cab driver, you want to get out as soon as you can to pick up the next passenger. If you're a leisurely person, you have a lot of spare time. You can spend the day there. Or in Singapore, there's a terminal, I think Terminal 2, where there's a huge mall attached to Terminal 2. And ordinary people drive to this mall and they spend the weekend there. They go and eat because it's not just a shopping mall, it's got a lot of food offerings. And I remember my brother took me there a few times. So let's go to the airport and have lunch. And it's quite often they do that. When you have that facility, it becomes a possibility. So yes, you can create something.
But sometimes this idea, the idea of having a duty-free zone in the airport doesn't work well in some cities like KL. The entire KL is a duty-free. So I have to spend time in the airport actually to buy things that which I can buy from downtown. So
That's because you don't want to miss your flight. So you go there early. And then you're trapped in this hermetic zone. Yeah. But you don't have to buy anything.
And usually they have special edition things at the airport that you would not find in the downtown. So like
Yeah, that's true. Offers.
Special offers or special packaging to take for your friends back home that you would not be able to find it downtown.
So I think in
Yes,
the KL,
yes.
it's not in this concept. You can find everything in the Syria Mall, for example.
Yes.
But that's only for the locals.
They repeat.
The people who actually came a visitor to the country, they might not know everything around.
I don't know if you remember when we were in Manchester. I had a car, and sometimes when we get bored, at least I remember with my cousin, we would go to the airport, Manchester Airport, because there they, you could sit in the lounge and watch the planes going up and down. That was exciting. Also, we didn't have a TV, so there was this pay TVs. You sit in a chair with a small TV, you put 10 pence in it, and you start watching the TV. And that was really, and you drink coffee. It was really wonderful because it's like passing time, and one way of entertainment for us.
Yeah.
I mean, now, of course, there are a lot of, different things have happened, and it would be nice, if people say, well, I'm going to the airport, and just enjoy having coffee or doing some shopping and without having to travel, or without having to, or even if you have somebody who's traveling, when he's leaving or she's leaving, you go to this place and spend an hour there before you're going back to Amman. I think it would be a great idea, but you see, there are some also airports where you have hotels associated with the airport.
Yeah, the trouble with airports is that they are far from the city center, right? They're quite far, and it's expensive to travel there. So if you it's okay, I think. If you just want to have a coffee, I don't know, 5 JDs or whatever, and you have to pay 30 JD to get a cab there and back, it doesn't make sense. So you have to have a reason by bus.
Jordan, we have lots of cars, so it's like.
But if you have public transport, like you can go on the underground, or a cheap train, and that's fine.
Even
That's
if
workable.
It's like a cheap bus.
A bus, yeah, yeah.
One of the chapters of my life, I lived abroad, and I think because you mentioned about the experience or the image of the airport. When I missed Jordan or the country, I used to take the subway and go to the airport, maybe eat something or drink something, because it's like a very important symbol in the community. It's the gate to where you want to be maybe at one point.
Yes.
Like when you wanted to go back to Malaysia, and if you miss your country, it's the closest abroad to where you want
Is
to
to
be.
go to an airport.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but unfortunately, the symbolism of airports or architecture, I think we have a great problem of symbolism. We are associating everything to business and money. This is one point that I wanted to share, and another point about like the topic of the first public domain. I went through, and one of the experiences that I really enjoyed in an airport, it was on a Christmas time in Europe. And they had a temporary market, which is Christmas market, as we all know. They have it's very common in Europe to have Christmas markets. Yeah. And one of those themed markets was in front of an airport. So if I had a little bit more time, because when I'm in the city, I want to leave, then I'm rushing all day long, and I'm not enjoying the city, and I want to go really early. So maybe temporary events or temporary markets or temporary kind of architecture could take place in front of airports.
You're referring to Munich, are you?
Yes.
They have the plazas
exactly.
connecting
Exactly.
the two terminals. Yeah. Yeah, that's become strangely very successful, that space. All they needed to do was put the roof over that piazza.
Yeah.
For me, I had an idea of trying to really merge between the public and the security checks, where, for instance, you can actually have airline companies, for instance, sponsor the idea of allowing people to actually have their own security checks happen while they are in a cafe in public areas. So you go to a cafe, you pay, for instance, a little bit of extra money, but then you are already checked in through a VIP service. So you have coffee, and then you are checked in, and then you go just straight to your duty-free area without basically going through the white zone, if you call it the purple, white, and green. So the green and white are merged together in a way where you are paying for a certain service, and this service is added also upon it, a VIP service that allows you to go through the process of actually going through the white without having the hassle of the white. And this is sponsored by the airlines. So with the airlines, you are paying a little bit of extra fee, but you are exempted from certain hassles of going through the headache of lines. So the idea, I think, is trying to merge between the white and the green can create success, because people are now very rational, very logical, and they know what they want, and they're trying to find different ways of really lessening their stress. No matter how much you do in the green, they know the white is going to be stressful. So they are thinking about the white, how they can get away with it. So create a service to lessen the headache of the white, through entertaining service by having coffee or whatever, or meal, and then you are getting also a VIP service through the white, and then that basically would actually be a nice blend between merging the white and the green.
Yeah, this is what exactly we're doing in Azerbaijan. In the new Baku terminal, we have this CIP lounge where you can do exactly that. You pay for that service. You get screened within this lounge, and we're preparing a lift after screening to take them straight up to the main business lounge where they can continue their time. And that lounge then is connected directly to some boarding gates. So that's happening. But that's for people who don't have a business class ticket. But if you have business class, you're going through the fast lane anyway.
Yes, yes.
Fast checkout, fast check-in, and you're done.
I mean, the concept of the decentralization of really going through security.
Yeah.
I think the white zone, if you will call it the white zone, I think it is more because of logistical government policies that has created this kind of security.
Yeah.
This government that has created this kind of, if you commercialize it and have more a business thinking logic, I think you can merge both of them together.
That's true.
You can
Yes.
create
Yeah.
something that is feasible for anyone to actually to decentralize the security checks and make it also within part of the process of the private sector to handle this process, and then
Yes, yes,
it would reduce expenses of staff being available. At the same time, it lets the private sector make it a more user-friendly experience in the airport traveling experience itself.
It's a very good point, but it goes back to regulation, because at the moment it's part of national security. And the government or the state trains and hires these people and assigns them to airports. So you need to get the state or the Ministry of Transport to detach that from national security and, then offer it to, good idea. 3 or 5 companies can be offering the service. Immediately you get to the airport, you go to this company, they give great service, better coffee, I don't know, and then off you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
But unfortunately, it's a controlled activity.
Yeah, I mean,
Some airports like Heathrow, the screening is privatized, but they are under a lot of scrutiny. But most airports around the world, it's part of the state, agency. So yeah. But that's good thinking. Yeah, think out of the box.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Here in Jordan, we have you can pre-check your baggages in one of their offices, and then the other day you can travel without your baggages. It's already there.
Yes.
I'm
yes.
not sure if it's.
No, this is a common practice now.
I mean, we have only here one airline that does this, which is Royal. I think maybe if it's many of other airlines that does the same thing, it will ease the process of screening and people running around with bags in the
Yeah.
And I think they don't charge any extra money for that. And it will be easier for them because they can handle much bigger groups on certain more flexible time, rather than you are in a 3 hours period of time and you have to do all these things once for many passengers.
Yes.
And that
Yeah.
will help also.
In fact, I was told recently that there are companies now who are who will sell you a slot. Say you want to have your security screening done at a certain time, you pay a little sum, and you're guaranteed this slot, and you go in, do your bag screening, and you're done. You don't have to queue with everybody else.
But again,
So they're privatizing this.
Maybe 2,000 people do the same thing. They pay extra money, and again you are stuck with 2,000.
Then you get the central screening.
Again, it will have another problem. Even if you make a prioritization for them.
But the thing that we're planning in Azerbaijan is only specific to the AZL airlines. It's not open to everyone. So you got to have a AZL ticket, then you're allowed.
The country's carrying.
Because they
Yes.
have logistics,
Yeah.
they have the offices and logistics. Like Royal Aviation, for example, British Airways doesn't have that facility here in downtown Amman, where you can go and leave your luggage, and then they have all the transportation to the airport for the luggage. So it's really related to the national airline mostly.
Well, I've been thinking about a new startup myself, which is to travel without luggage. So basically, maybe some of you can take my idea and develop it. Very welcome, because I'm past my prime. I don't have 20 years ahead to develop it. But my idea was simply to travel without baggage. So you have an app where you love your favorite clothes. You're going to another city. Let's say you like to wear Zara clothes. You clock in Zara. You book everything you want. And it's only pure rental. Eh? You just rent that clothing for 2 weeks let's say in Malaga, in Spain, for example. And after that, you return, or someone collects those used clothing, they send it back to Zara, and it's cleaned and so you're just hiring clothing for your travel. You don't need to buy or bring anything with you, but using the app, you pick up whatever you want. Even toiletries, package, spare shoes, everything you need, you can just do a short, quick rental. Just like rent a car, like a car app or an electric scooter.
You have to convince my wife.
No, but
I would say the downside of it is how of course they would show. Usually, like when you're traveling, you want to have a lot of fun. You're eating out. You're feeling all over. So, it's maybe a downside for the clothing company to offer such service, because yes, hiring clothes with a higher rate, but still people would bring them torn apart, bring them like dirty. Even if they offer like another fee, it's like this clothes they will trash it. So it will only create more trash in the world.
yes, possibly. But I thought you buy an insurance.
Exactly.
You pay an insurance for that.
And not the clothing company.
2 weeks or whatever. Yeah. The clothing company can bear it because they are big names, and also if, let's say, on a typical month you have 500 people doing this, that's already giving you a lot of profit. Yeah, I don't know. But also it saves resources, right? It means we don't have to carry bags, we don't have to put it on airplanes. The planes get lighter, they don't use more fuel, burn less carbon, and so on.
It will be cheaper for the planes itself.
Cheaper for the planes,
As you
yes.
said, they charge you per weight. It means the weight is less.
Yes, yeah.
The fuel is less, which means that it will be less. Maybe the tickets will be cheaper. They can afford maybe cheaper tickets for the.
Yeah, and you hook up with any global clothing outlet, H&M, Zara, whatever, even no brand companies. When you're done with your clothing, you drop it in an airport box, and off you go. You've paid for it.
Extra cost on the traveler, the people. This will add the extra cost for the people when they have to rent the clothes, when they have travel.
Extra cost for the traveler.
Yeah, travel, because he's renting clothes.
Yes. You travel to buy clothes. But you're initially you're traveling with 23 kilos of clothing.
With empty bag
and then you come back with 46 kilos.
There's an offer to buy it, actually buy the clothes that you rented also. It could be another
Could be an option, yes, yeah. And then you get a discount.
Hey, this might work in Europe. But
Yeah, not in the world. No. We want another 23 kilos for gifts.
Sorry, I have a questions more than suggestion for that. I have maybe 10 questions if you can, or if you need to, or prefer to respond this one by one, or get all the questions one shot. The first questions, who is the client for the airports usually? And why we don't get this, or the client to be as a government? This is the first question. The second one, if there any standard or specification for the airport design, and where we can find it. I think it's you response me private if you can share the the data for all. The three one there is any related with airport and urban context. When we design the airport, we relate it with the urban context, or we built it away from any context or any cities. The fourth one, there is any types of airports, like civil airports, and for the army we have a special airport. For the goods we have a special airport, and there is any specification for everyone. We have can we design the airport with any like sustainability certificate, or that's possible to be? As an architect, shall we study the circulation for the airplanes, the same circulation for the airplanes, or there is another consultant or another disciplines study the circulation for that? And the other thing, when we start design the airport, we take many consideration like user experience, a function, a form. What's the probability for this one, or what's the main consideration for that? Can we have a conference hall in the airport for the political or the political persons? We have as a conference hall in airport, make the meetings and go back to the cities. The last two questions, one about your experience and your experience in the Queen Rania airport, if you can tell us about this experience. And we need to tell us, if you can, about your experience in the airport design and the offices with your partners or your bosses, if you can.
That's let's start with the first one. There's a lot of questions there. Let's start again with question one, and I'll answer one by one.
With question one, who is the client for the airport, and why usually does not the government? This is the first one.
Usually it's owned by the government. The state owns the airport. But in many countries already, these are privatized. So they are in private hands, private equity. The biggest one is GIP, Global Infrastructure Group. And they are a Warren Buffett kind of setup, BlackRock, and they own a lot of airports all over the world. So normally state, but when the state privatizes, it goes to private hands. Yeah. So I'm not sure about your airport here, whether it's privatized or state. BOT, yeah. So there you are. So that's the normal ownership.
Before it was with the government.
Yes, yeah. Okay, question two.
The second one about the standard and specification for the airport.
Yes. The biggest reference document is in ICAO. I think there's a whole section on how you design airports. And then as to how you design the airfield, you can find this online. It's called the Aerodrome Design Manual, and that has all the standards on how aircraft circulate around. It is a specialized. It's an engineering field.
It's not architecture.
No. So we don't design this stuff. It's air traffic planners. They do that.
The three one about there is any related between the airport and the urban context.
Okay, in this sense, normally, like especially in Russia, the design has to be approved by the city architect. So the chief architect of that particular city has to review the drawings and then recommend it to their planners for approval or not approval, or make changes and so on. So in that sense, yes, there is a connection between the terminal design and the city itself.
But usually, I think what he is saying, usually the airports would require a large plot of land, which is not normally available within the urban context of a particular well-established city. So that's why they go as far possible as
Wouldn't that be for international airports, but would for domestic travels can have maybe a smaller
if there is, sufficient land for it. But otherwise, like look, for example, Dubai, it was away from the city, Dubai International Airport. But now it's all surrounded
merging.
When they built it, it was a desert, nothing. But now they built Al Maktoum Airport, which is very far away.
Okay.
So is there a consideration for the location, specific considerations for the location of the airport? If we, when we choose the
like
location?
noise or the pressure from the airport. There is any reason about that? The airport to be away?
Well, all kinds. There are hundreds of regulations for the siting of terminal airports. Yeah, noise pollution is one of them. Wind direction, wind flow. Huge numbers. Yeah. It's a big topic. Question 4.
The fourth one, the type of the airport. Do we have any types of airport, or usually we design all the airport in the same strategy?
If you look at IATA Design Reference Manual, the ADRM, I think it's called, it will give you a scenario of, or even Neufert's architects details. It'll give you a whole range of terminal types. So you got the linear, you got the finger, you got the radial, then you got the hub, you got standalone, with planes around the building.
Bearing concept.
Yeah, so there's a lot of these examples.
But for sure, military airport or cargo airport is different from passenger.
Those are totally different, yes. Well, your question was about military.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Types of airports, yeah, military, cargo.
Is it types of airports you combine the cargo and the passengers?
They are normally combined. Because under the seats are all the cargo. Yeah. That's how the aviation revenue is got from cargo.
But the army should be separated.
Army is totally separated, yeah. Okay, number 5, I think.
Number 5, can we design the airport with any sustainability system?
It's the big thing now, totally. Most airports are going down the sustainability route for the last 20 years. Water recycling, renewable energy, wastewater, all that stuff. And you can, there are standards like LEEDs, right? You know about this, LEEDs and all these can apply to airports.
Can apply?
Yes. Green airports, they call them.
The next one, shall we study the circulation for the airplane itself?
That's done by engineers, yeah. Airport engineers, yeah.
What's the first consideration when we design the airport? The user experience, function, the shape, the form?
As I mentioned earlier, it's your starting point, and the most important one is your traffic. Yeah, meaning your passenger numbers. Because ultimately, in this life or world we live in, it's all to do with humans, numbers. And without the traffic, people flow, or moving from one city to another, there is no airport. We need to know how many people are coming in and going out. So the first thing you do, for example, if I were asked to redesign your airport here, I will want to see the traffic figures on a yearly basis. Is it growing? Is it decreasing? And then, what is your current capacity? So these are all the early parameters. Before you even put your pen on paper, you need to understand all these things.
They have made a study, like
Yeah.
5, 10, 15
Yes,
years.
yes, this is a usual cycle, yeah.
And they designed it to be
Modular.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
in the modular system, so they can increase. Extent.
Yeah, yeah. So modularity is another key factor. Yeah. Because you need to be thinking of growth 5 years before you reach that point. Let's say you're thinking of growth, right? In 2030, you got to start planning now. Because whatever you do, whether it's a renovation or a new build, it takes at least 5 years to give you that capacity 5 years later. So that's why we have the 5 or 10 year planning.
Even 10 years.
Yes, yeah, and then the modularity of the plan.
And the space behind the modularity, because like the orientation of the space. to add on those modules.
Yeah, so those are all the initial concerns. When you then, establish a footprint for your first terminal, you got to make sure that everything around it is empty for the next 30 or 40 years for you to grow. Yeah.
How much growth should an airport actually be? Is there a limit?
Well, the rule, the sort of previous experience, it's usually about 10% every year. If you're lucky, you're going to go 10% on 10%.
When do you see that this airport is completely
You have
now
to build a new one.
you have to build a new one. When do you stop? Is there a limit to how much an airport should actually have in terms of size and capacity?
There is a limit, yes.
It might be with the area that you told us, the rule of thumb.
No. If you look at Miami or Lex, San Francisco, is it? No, Lex is Los Angeles. They have like 7 or 8 terminals, all springing from one route, as it were. And it becomes so unwieldy that to go from one point to the other point, you need to take a bus. And it's like a 10-minute bus ride. And that is when you need to stop. You cannot go on forever. Just the sheer practicality of it. It doesn't make sense. And it'll kill all your transfer passengers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry for all, I take a little time, but I have the last 2 questions.
Yes.
If you can tell us about your experience in Queen Anne Airport and your experience in the design offices you work in and with your partners and with your bosses.
Experience in green airports. Did you say?
Which is Amman Airport.
Oh, I see. My experience
What
of
do you think of it?
traveling through it. The one by Foster's, right?
Yes.
I thought the interior was very austere, very ordered. The ceiling height was nice. The use of black was too overpowering for me. And the other night I was thinking it would be nice if it was just slightly dark gray rather than pure black. A dark gray would be more pleasing to the eye.
But actually it's all concrete. It's concrete.
Yes, but a lot of the wall paneling down the corridors and so on.
On the arrival.
Yeah, arrival, yeah.
Maybe your experience on departure will be different.
Will be different?
It's completely.
Yeah, it's raw concrete, right?
When you depart.
Fairface, yeah.
I think when you depart is different than when you arrive. Because
Yeah.
you don't see much of that, of the airport itself. Because the departure part is the upper level, where you have all the skylights or all the open spaces. But when you come in, you only see the small hallways. And the checkpoints
Yes. And then you go to this passport control
Yes,
area. It's a bit tight over there.
but get your experience when you.
Yeah, so,
Passport control is a bit tight.
yes,
We'll delay
pretty
your
tight.
answer until you depart.
Yeah.
Now the other question is.
I remember departing once, but it was a short time. I didn't see much of the food and beverage offerings. There were some, but it's not like a huge, you know, Heathrow type thing. Yeah. Yeah.
But can I ask a question? Because
Sure.
I remember when you talked about Zaha Hadid's airport and KPF in Abu Dhabi, you said these airports have nothing to do with the identity of the country they're in. So, do you have a good example for an airport that is reflects the identity of the country you're in, or what would be a success point for you for an airport from an architectural point of view, for it to reflect the culture, the country? You know, now the trend is, you've seen Foster's, he's designed the
Yeah.
Kuwait International Airport, the new one.
Yeah, well, okay.
I passed by it yesterday. It's a very long elevation.
Which one is this?
Kuwait International
Kuwait.
Airport, the new one. It's not operating yet.
Mm.
Well, the same goes for his design in King Salman Airport. He tried to use material to have something to do with the
Country.
with the country or with the culture. And he's done another one in Asir also, Abha, but he's overused the local architecture. But what for you, which one do you find probably most appealing or more linked to the culture? Or
We were saying earlier, it has to be Bali. Bali with the traditional architecture. But on the other hand, I'm not saying that every airport must reflect. It really is up to the country and the sponsors of the airport themselves, how much they believe in selling their culture, you know. There are some countries that they don't want to even talk about their culture. They want to have that super modern look. I'll give you an example. I've done a few airports in Russia, and when I was designing, in the process of designing, all these consultants were saying, we hate the Soviet era, this looks a bit Soviet, you know, these big cantilevers, don't show it, etc., etc. So they have a sheer rejection of their past. You know, so every country is different. They want something super modern, a bit like UAE. Will the UAE ever design something that looks like a traditional fishing village? Never, right? Because they kind of look sadly on their past. They want to talk about the future. So every country has a different psyche. And I was reading about Oman, which I was very impressed. Oman rejects the high-rise system, right? The modern, tall buildings, they completely don't want this. And that I find totally admirable, really amazing.
Even the color also.
Yes,
They
very.
mandate the white color, and if you want to change,
And that there
you
is.
need to take many approvals to do a different color than white.
And there's a belief in their own culture, in their own built form, and that is something we support. So some countries reject, some countries embrace, but not every airport must reflect their culture. But when they do, and it's successful, it's very nice. And it encourages tourism, I think. Yeah.
Can we start thinking about airports in a different business model since there is private investors? So now while we're thinking about the design of the airport, we were thinking about maybe the retails and any other businesses that can get us revenue for the same airport. However, maybe we can pursue institutes or other investors that can accommodate an airport structure which can be very cheap and very functional. Let's say for an off-grid, maybe universities, it can accommodate an airport that can have the revenue of the airport back to the institute itself. So let's say here in Jordan, we have the Queen Adia International Airport, and it can serve multiple areas, let's say people in Zarqa or Irbid. So there's a lot of people who are going to use it. However, if let's say we have the Hashemite University or the Jordan University of Science and Technology, if they had a decent plot area that they can have a business of a very functional airport, that the people in that area can use it, maybe it will minimize the amount of people who are going to use the, let's say, Queen Ali Airport, and the airport itself can get revenue back to the same institute there, or any other, maybe let's say, any other business. So rather than thinking about the airport, how it's a standalone structure that I need to have a lot of businesses to feed it and keep it running, maybe I'll start thinking differently. So there's a lot of private investors, maybe someone who can accommodate this kind of structure, and maybe some planner can intervene with this kind of business model and a long-term plan that will allow it to be successful. And as you already showed us at the beginning, there's a lot of, you can actually have a functional airport with a minimal amount of, I don't know, it's not that kind of costly.
Am I right in saying that you are talking about crowdfunding an airport?
No.
Or terminal?
No, it's
where
like,
you get businesses to fund it, and they all have a place within this.
well, eventually
this airport.
you're going to have a revenue of people actually buying the tickets, right? And maybe that will get back to the same, let's say, institute, one institute or multiple institute. So why should I think about the airport as a standalone structure, and I need to feed it with a lot of businesses? And these kind of businesses would be like the duty-free and the retail parts. However, if I maybe connect it to a campus, say, because the university have a lot of, let's say, revenue, maybe they can invest as well in the airport them to have more revenue back. It will actually, I wouldn't say serve the people in some in that area, so we won't have a lot of traffic in the main airports, because Jordan we have only 2 airports, one which have the most traffic and the other one I guess it's more domestic. So when we have more smaller airports, we start breaking down the airport concept to something pure functional related to, let's say, campuses. And by the way, we could have our public domain part. So we don't need to start thinking about how we can design the pre-screening part. It will be already part of something that is actually engaging.
That sounds good,
Yeah, but maybe that's the responsibility of planners, and I know some governmental figures should intervene in that part.
That's okay. I think mostly what you're trying to say is like including the airport in urban context.
Yeah, definitely, because at some point we already was talking about the airport, how it can expand to the urban context. So we're starting thinking about the airport as the dominant part of the design, and it can serve everything around. But we start thinking about it in a different way, that the airport is not dominant. It's a more complementary service that can be accommodated by a certain institute or some businesses that have actually decent amount of plot area that allow it to function properly. So rather than eventually it's pure functional, because whenever we start thinking about it, we create this kind of functional space which actually works, and we start adding these kind of other spaces that will make it more humane, having better experience. But maybe it's more about, okay, I just want to have my ticket and fly off. I can be engaged with the community and different part of the country by having it part of the campus or part of, I don't know, maybe different companies that have a very good budget to accommodate that, and eventually that revenue can feed back to this company or multiple companies, as you already mentioned.
International schools are one good example.
Yeah, very good. And
you get people flying in with their children, they use that near the airport.
I think like the best example that I've seen, it's an airport in Taiwan. It's called Taoyuan. And this airport is basically connected with the metro station. So it's like very easy to get, like you don't have to pay taxi a lot of money just to get to the airport. It's not secluded. But I've noticed that also where it's located, there are a lot of companies around it. So like businessmen tend to fly and like take this. But what I felt like during peak hours, let's say 8 a.m. when people are going to work, 5 p.m. when people are getting off work, it's hectic. It's kind of get hectic, like especially if you're just someone like foreigner, you want to get to the airport on and off. It's like, why I have to go with all of these workers who are trying to get into their company, It's kind of create a hectic situation to be in, because even though it's very studied well, but you can't help that sometimes there is going to be a lot of people in the same place. So you tend to like, for me, I personally I felt like he was going to the airport. Turns out he went to his company, and I followed him to his company, that random dude. So, you know, it just like, it creates a lot of confusion.
Yeah, but maybe at some point we shouldn't push it in a busy area. Let's say, as Ms. Wael just said, about this airport was off-grid, and now it's kind of condensed around it within the urban context. So, yeah, it should be planned prior that, or actually placing it in a, I don't know if it's a rural area or some kind of an empty plot, and eventually everything around will be planned accordingly to make it less hectic.
Yeah,
because
what you're saying is what we call an airport city, which is landside. You have this mix of activities, but you never mix the circulation. In the case of Taoyuan, they mixed it and made it very confusing. But if it's properly designed, it would have completely separate ways in, ways out for the airport city, for passengers. So yeah, it's a matter of design.
Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah.
And for Giza, like our airport is located in Giza, right? So a lot of projects are happening, like if you look outside like the airport, a lot of villas are being constructed, a lot of golf places are being constructed there, and like a lot of hotels. So I think Jordan is kind of like going through that way into making an airport and then like adding places by one. So there are a lot of villas are being constructed, golf places, golf clubs. I remember swimming club was constructed not long ago. So I think Jordan is also going to that path that you're talking about.
Yeah, but it's more about a priority, like which is the most priority part of it. Like at some point, it will allow you to plan this kind of stuff more seamlessly with the urban. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities, as I already said, but I hate the fact that we always think about this kind of building as a, let's say that, as a one structure that is distinct and it's not connected to other stuff. Maybe it's really good to have one airport that presents the country, have this kind of image, but other than that, you have, actually it's not only one airport, there's planning for airports. So you can engage it with the different businesses, and maybe you'll have a different flow of money. Yeah.
Especially Jordan is a small country. We need to take good advantage of every place that is being built.
And at some point, when you give the investor the idea that you can get a good chunk of money and revenue, you can start thinking about extending the design the way you want as an architect. But it's always kind of setback that, I don't want to get that big. How I'm going to get back revenue? How I'm going to invite businesses in? But in a different way, we can start redesigning the business model itself.
The thing in general about airports and where they happen to be, it's usually out of historical reasons, that there was maybe a trading route or a market or a growth of a population. You can, but it doesn't just appear out of nowhere, because they serve a hinterland, right? And for an airport to be viable, you need a hinterland of at least 5 million people, 3 to 5 million. And if you have another 1 or 2 airports in this hinterland, they start to compete with one another, so it doesn't work again. So it has a context. And when, let's say, in almost all my projects, we talk about an airport city, this landside, wonderful landside project, but none of them have taken root because the funding isn't there. Who wants to go and work in an airport environment far away, you see? Unless there is an established historical community. So that's one of our problems. So I think, any more questions? Otherwise we can, I want to close by, yes?
I want to actually where do we start as an architect? Do we, for instance, how to really get that experience of for instance, working with airports and to be interacting with firms that already have exposure to work with such projects.
Right.
With your own personal experience, how did you...
So my first airport was when I was working with Grimshaw. So we did the Terminal 5 competition. We lost that to Rogers. But the Heathrow Airport gave us a smaller project, and I was the project architect. This was an extension to Terminal 1. So I finished that, and I was so pleased with the activity.
How many architects were working on this?
There was me and 5 others,
5 others.
small team, and it was enough. It was a small extension to T1. After that, I was thinking to myself, I want to go on working on terminals. And then came the Calatrava exhibition. And he had in his portfolio, one of his models was the Bilbao airport. So when I joined him, he put me on Bilbao airport straight away.
So you always are looking for different
Yes, I was looking for airport projects deliberately.
different architects and then joining them. So
Yeah.
You followed a track of where the architects that are...
No, only the last one, which was Calatrava.
Okay.
The other was, I happened to be there. And another competition that I didn't mention was the KLIA, the Kuala Lumpur International Airport. So that came out a big competition, and Grimshaw put me as the lead designer for this airport. And I did the whole submission, and unfortunately we lost that for political reasons. Yeah, so that was the path. I said, well, one after another.
One question. How did it feel to you working with star architects or famous architects? Did you go after that, or it just happened that because they are designing airports, or you wanted specifically to work with a famous architect and learn from him?
Yeah, I think not because they were doing airports. Definitely because the experience and the quality of experience you're going to get will be much higher. And
do they have big teams working with them?
not really big teams. They're small but efficient teams. I mean, the biggest team was the one I ran with 5 other architects. And the other ones were, 2 or 3 people.
How big was Calatrava's team?
That was about 10 of us. Yeah. That was the whole office. The whole office in Paris was 10. And he had another office in Zurich, which was the engineering part. Yeah.
Now, when you talk about being 10 for the team, they're all architects, or?
All architects, yeah. Of various, various stages. So yeah, I mean, in terms of working for these people, it's definitely a privilege to be there. The fact that you're there and they're paying you.
And you had a daily interaction with
Not necessarily, no, not daily. They're usually sitting in their glass boxes, like you here. Grimshaw had his glass box. Rogers was always walking around. He was never sitting down. I think he's got some, attention deficit thing. He never sat down for many minutes, walking around. He was a very nice man. He passed away a few years ago. Tall chap. When I met him, he's of Italian origin. Very much a gentleman. Yeah. I was just a new student. I left. Left and joined him. Left college, I mean. But my portfolio was all this high-tech architecture stuff. Steel and glass and, and they took me on straight away. One of the partners who interviewed me said, "Unfortunately, we don't have any work for you. But we like your portfolio so much, we'll take you anyway." So they just paid me a bread and butter salary. enough not to faint.
How long it will take for an architect to have a full experience in airport design to guide a project from 0 to 100%?
I would say between 8 to 10 years, yeah. Because when you get involved with an airport, you may only just help in drawing things up. You may not be in the front line dealing with the consultants, the planners, or even getting anywhere near the client. So yeah, it takes a while to build up your knowledge.
So it's maybe take for you to complete this experience, 8 years?
Well, kind of, yeah. So, but I was lucky because in my early years, I was in Grimshaw and I did 2 airports. One was built. And then based on the 3, I got to Santiago. I delivered the construction set and it was built. And then over in Malaysia, I was doing a cargo terminal. And that was my first breakthrough with a German client.
So it's not just the duration or the number of years. It's what kind of experience.
Yeah.
Every project was challenging and different from the other.
Every project's different, yes, yeah.
How long the project?
But when you've done a lot, you begin to know the process, yeah. Yeah, there's a pattern there. It's like hospital design, you know.
What about knowledge of structure, steel structure and concrete structure and spans with airports?
Yes, you got to have that in your background too.
Yes.
Yeah.
How much knowledge would you have to acquire more to really be able to know how the logic of those spans?
Well, you have to learn it yourself.
You have to learn it yourself.
And in my case, I was lucky. I was with high-tech people.
Not me,
Your stone technology. No, but anyway, my exposure was with the Arab engineers, the Bureau Happel, all those big names, right? And they will expose you to ideas about spans. And so some of the buildings I built were all with these joints, and you can see in the book there, steel. So already I've got a very good basis. By the time I joined Santiago, I knew what I was doing. Yeah.
How much is the actual steel structure and the civil, the actual, the whole or civil structure of a building with airports? How much knowledge does it really require to really be able to know how these things are compared to normal architectural logic? So are we talking about 2 different completely levels of knowing the actual workflow of airports and knowing the actual steel structure that would really...
Okay, look, as an architect, you need to know both, yes? So you set up the concept for your structure,
yes.
And then you rely on the engineers to give you all their findings. Yes. And then you can say yes or no, and how about this and that. In my case, I've even, in the case of Senai Airport, the owner or the airport owner assigned me as the structural consultant as well. Yeah, so I was able to do the structural part under my wing, and I designed the whole steel framing with an engineer to do all the calculations. So I can do both, but I'm not qualified to sign and to analyze. Yeah.
Sorry, I have 2 questions, if I may.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. 2 questions and a note. The first question is, do we usually, in the early stages of design, do we take into consideration times of crisis like wars or natural disasters when designing? Because in these times, airports are crowded, but in these times they're especially crowded. So if we do take them into consideration, how? And that's the first question. The second question is, maybe we could, it's an observation, but about airports, maybe we could include the culture part of a city or a country by maybe adding like a museum extension to the airport, or because talking about the traveling experience, the tram experience, personally speaking, is far more exciting for me than the airport experience. So I think exploring the city is an essential part in the traveling experience, and that could be enforced by adding cultural nodes within the if the airport is not to be connected to the city directly, then there could be cultural nodes added to it to introduce the city in a way or another. And thirdly, they've come 4 points, but thirdly, could we think about airports in a small scale? Because that, to some extent, that sounds like off limit. Airports should always be large scale on a large plot of land. So if we think about them in a different perspective, small scale airports, a bigger number of airports across the country or across the city, that could produce a different form of experience and architecture. Because if we're talking about this big structures, it's always going to be the same. We're governed by the structure, by the final image of the airport. So if we're talking on a small scale, I think the culture could take a chance.
Yes.
And presenting itself. And lastly, maybe I forgot. I think, yeah, that should cover it.
Yes, all very good points. Yeah, totally agree with you. No need for me to respond to that one. I think it's very good observations. Yeah.
On the museum part, I think some countries are.
Yes. Yeah. I was about to say, in the Cambodia, we arrange for the arrival process before your passport for people to go through galleries where they could start to see what they're entering. And after the passport control, again, they go through something before they go pick up their bags. So yes, it can be all integrated.
Just on the point of times of crisis, like wars and natural disasters, is that included in the design process?
Yes, all terminals have something called the ICCC, but this relates to airport disasters. So it's called the International Crisis Control Center. If there's a plane crash or whatever, everyone gathers in that room. And that's where they also do the press reporting about a certain flight that's crashed or whatever. But then on the terminal itself, you always got to respond to earthquake design criteria and so on.
And in terms of occupancy programming, because I'm not sure how was that included in the design process. Because you mentioned, I think, 10,000 square
meters per million.
Yes, so that's the norm. But in cases of immigration or for any reason, like wars or natural disasters, does that number increase, or is there a certain margin?
For evacuation.
Yeah. Yeah, it can go up. Let's say the criteria of 10,000. Let's say it's 10 million and it goes up to 15 million. Yeah, in a certain crisis of war or whatever. So you take that 15 million and you divide by the same square footage or same square meterage, and you might get something like, let's say, 7,500 per meter square. You're well below the standard, but you can still push people through. It's just a bit more uncomfortable, that's all. Maybe more crowding in your corridors, more queuing, more congestion, but
that still works.
yeah, it still works. So your limit is between 8 to 14. That's the practice norm.
Uncomfortable anyway, stressful. If you have to leave your country in millions, so it's okay.
Okay, can we close now? Everyone's. Yeah. I want to just fire one last question back to you guys, which is, how do you feel about your airport here? Does it respond to a national identity? Do the materials, work in terms of what's natural here? And how do you feel when you come back in? Is this home? This airport, does it represent Home or just another international airport? Yeah. This is the last round.
Can I start?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I am too biased about that. Thank you. But I will say it's a very organized airport where you know where to go, where you know like how to navigate through. Maybe not a big selection of shops, maybe not a big selection, but I live in Jordan anyways, so I can shop anywhere.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very well organized place. Maybe the interior is a bit too dark, but it's like finally I've reached homeland.
So it
I
works
think
for you.
I relax when I
Yeah.
first see, even when I'm in the plane, like I look at the window and peek. I think finally.
But I think
That's
it's
good.
because it's small. When we go to the large airport.
Because it's smooth. Small. Okay.
When we go to the
Yeah.
large airport, I think the organized will be loose in some points.
What is the design capacity? Do you know?
I think 12
12 million?
I think.
Yeah.
12, I think. Me, 20 million?
I like it in general, compared to the one that was before. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
No,
It's a
probably not.
huge leap between this one and that one.
But it has vaults, right? Am I right?
In general, I like it. In general.
Do the vaults remind you of something historical or?
There's nearby there is a
Souk.
palace from the Umayyad period. It's called Al-Mushatta. And Foster said he was inspired by the vaults of that palace, which is still standing, after 1,300 years or 400 years.
But he also used vaults in Hong Kong.
Well, he was inspired by Amman Airport. And Kuwait Airport also is repeating the same kind of thing.
When you're big and famous, whatever you say, people will believe you.
I think the airport, because I remember when I was a child and we went in the car and we saw all this construction. I think it was amusing to see all those concrete precasted massive structures.
Yeah.
And the anticipation for a new airport was really an excitement for a child at that time.
Yes, yeah.
So I think I liked it because I waited for it for so long. And it represents...
And it's new, right?
It's
new, fresh, yeah.
Fresh, and it represents home at the end of the day. So
yeah.
I personally think it's the best architectural airport. in the region.
Yeah.
I mean, around,
if you go to an airport in Egypt, not every airport there needs to look like a pyramid, right? So it's a modern building prototype for a different purpose, but
I think it represents the industry itself, because planes, aeroplanes, traveling, it's something modern.
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
right.
something prehistoric or...
Yeah.
I don't know why it doesn't have a little bit of culture or identity. I think it's a beautiful building. It's a functional building.
Yes.
Enjoy it.
It's a similar argument with the Beijing one by Zaha, that it has nothing to do with Chinese civilization. Yeah.
I think it has to.
But this is always a question in government circles or amongst architects. In Malaysia, there was always this argument, why must a mosque have a dome? And they were always arguing about this. And the authorities always insisted on a dome, no matter how big or small it is. Because that dome is a historical form that symbolized the religion. But we never had...
Structural type in that period.
Yes, it was a way of spanning a big space without columns, yes? With the pendentives and all those things.
Actually answer more about this about the mosques then. Why would the domes are available there?
It's a symbol. It's not functional.
I think the minaret can
It's not
represent
a
the mosque
necessity.
more than the dome itself. In the minaret you can see it
Yeah.
farther away from dome itself.
But if you were asked to design a mosque in Taiwan, let's say, yeah, how will you approach that? Where Taiwan has
make it, reflective of the local architecture. I will not import architecture from the Middle East to Taiwan.
Yeah.
And also,
Yeah.
they have a history, they have tradition of mosques in China.
Well, okay, the same argument then goes to people building airports, right?
But the airport is associated with a function that is
Yeah.
international and it's modern, and it needs to have big spans, huge spans, to facilitate movement of people. Therefore, you wouldn't want to go to traditional.
The point the lady you made about having smaller airports and more of it is that in today's way of life, a runway needs 3 kilometers of land, and planes need to carry a certain capacity. So that's why it's economical to concentrate them in 1 or 2 airports for one country. You cannot have too many. But you can have small regional airports for tourism, for specific purpose like a Hajj or something. Yes, so...
Hajj terminal in Jeddah is a good example because they use the inspiration
Tents,
of the tents. SOM created that design.
Yes.
And they created a technology that is amazing, for that airport. So they related it symbolically, and actually it won the Aga Khan Award in its first cycle in 1979 or something. The Hajj terminal. So you don't need to go to the traditional imagery.
Yeah.
You make a reference of somehow to the culture. It can be with the contemporary interpretation and relevance, like the Hajj terminal. The first airport in Kuwait was designed by Kenzo Tangi, and he made the airport look like a plane. You know that it's a famous project by Kenzo Tangi. The new airport now, it's all these
waves,
vaults, which Foster has repeated in Kuwait, in Amman, I don't know.
Vault architect,
and there's Istanbul airport, I think, is also about all this.
Vaults.
So it became popular. It's a way of spanning large
Structural form,
yes,
structural
form. So it's logical. I think if there's logic and there's relevance to technology, I think this itself is successful.
Okay.
What do you think about the Singapore Changi airport?
Well, it's always been winning awards, so a lot of people think really highly of it. I've been through it many times, very good.
Do you think it is an experience to really add for other airports? Just to it's an actually, can you describe for them the
Well, the Terminal 4, Terminal 3, in fact, all their terminals are being upgraded into the seamless travel now. So you only need to just scan your passport and you're through. It's very, very fast. And you can also access auto gates. Whatever nationality, whatever passport you have, you can just enter with the auto gate.
Also, there are
very modern.
Free movies and butterfly gardens. And
Yeah, so they, you saw they derive their income 70% from all this stuff.
We are from university.
Yeah, even small swimming pool, cinemas, what have you.
This is on the land or actually
Airside.
The airside.
Airside, yes.
The airside,
not in the land side. Land side, they have shopping malls.
Okay, wow.
So why is that so? Because Singapore's a city-state. It's really, really tiny. So you can bring everything together.
So would you consider this as a module, success module of actually trying to mimic
It is successful, yes, but it wouldn't work anywhere else. Yeah, like you were saying, yeah, that to try and create all the mass of activities, it can work in Singapore, but elsewhere it's a little bit more difficult.
Is it because Singapore is a bridge between two different, some sort of transport hub in the Far East area?
Yes, yes.
I think when I used to travel to, for instance, to Canada, to Australia, I used to always land in Singapore.
Yes, that's right.
Singapore airport is like.
Yeah, and the key is developing an airline, a very strong, powerful airline. Just as Turkish Airways is now becoming a big, widespread airline and creating hubs. Singapore has been a hub, but much earlier on. In Asia itself, you will see more hubs coming up. So eventually Singapore might just become one hub out of many. It's like the multipolar world. Yeah. Okay, I think we'll end here. Yeah. We'll have a great afternoon, guys. Yeah. Thank you.